All right, so today we are going to be working on our perfect sphere demo. So again, start with wedged clay, which I already wedged, and then you're going to rip the clay into two equally sized spheres of clay, and start by just putting a little bit of water in them and rolling them into a ball. Smoothing out any cracks. Think about this as kind of like how you would pack a snowball. Just rolling it kind of in between your palms. So this is exactly how you learned earlier to make a pinch pot. This technique will be kind of centered around really harnessing that pinch pot skill and getting to practice the 3 S's, so score, slip, and smooth. The techniques that you're gonna need to attach pieces of clay. So you're gonna need to have, again, water, slip, all of your tools, ruler, sponge, popsicle stick, paper clip, all that fun stuff. Okay, so once you have your 2 spheres of clay that are smoothed out and about of equal size, you're going to start by making your pinch pot. So again, cup your left hand, put your clay into it, take your thumb and press it directly into the clay, and then pinch and turn, pinch and turn, pinch and turn. So again, you're trying to make like a little pot, and you want the thickness to be no thicker than your pinky finger. So then you're gonna need to start kind of widening it and redistributing some of that clay by pulling it upwards. All of your perfect projects are gonna be 3 inches by 3 inches. So think about the width of each of these needs to be 1.5 inches, or the height, and then the width needs to be 3, because that's how wide our sphere needs to be. So I'm kind of widening it out by kind of pulling it, and again, my hand is always cupped here to kind of help, 1, to make sure I don't push through the clay, and 2, to make sure that it doesn't, if it sits flat, you're gonna have this flat base, which isn't gonna help you because you're trying to make something that's round on both sides. And then as you go, just again, checking the thickness, making sure that there aren't any parts that are too thick or too thin, especially the very bottom part. This is one part that I see that ends up being quite thick for most. So again, you can just pull some of the clay upwards if that part is too thick. And then just measure as you go. Again, we're going for 3 inches, 1.5. So mine does need to be a little bit wider. I'm just gonna put a little water on the rim of it, and then again, just trying to kind of widen it, using my hand as kind of like a brace. So once you get to about the size that you want, then you want to kind of smooth out all these lumps. You are going to be working on this over a couple of days. So again, just taking my popsicle stick, dipping it in a little bit of water, and then using it to kind of smooth out these parts that had my hand on it. And notice I'm bracing it on the inside so that I don't poke through, and I'm not setting it on the ground where it could flatten out. Okay, so I'm kind of holding it, always working on it in my hands rather than on the table, because this helps to not flatten out any parts, and it's just extra security. I'm not gonna be able to push through this if my hand is on the inside protecting it. So you will most likely kind of get to this step and then leave your project overnight to kind of dry and get leather hard. So again, remember, to get it leather hard, you are going to leave it with just a plastic bag, no damp paper towels. Okay, and I'm using my sponge just to kind of complete the smoothing. If you have your plastic card, this is another really great smoothing tool to just kind of refine all of those fingerprints, etc. So again, just double checking the measurement as you go, making sure it's 3-ish. Top is about 1.5. I'm gonna set this off to the side and make my second one. So again, my hands are pretty dry, so just make sure you have some water. And again, thumb straight into the center, and then you're gonna pinch it and turn. The reason why you wanna turn is if you just stood here pinching, one side is gonna get really thin, and then the other sides are gonna stay thicker. So you wanna make sure that you're turning it as you go so that it continues to become the same thickness all the way around. This is how you can create things, hand building, that look like they were thrown on the pottery wheel by kind of mimicking that same movement. So this is moving and your hands are kind of guiding it along. Again, paying attention to that thickness, because remember, if your clay is too thick, it can and will explode in the kiln, because remember, thick clay holds water or air inside of it, and if this water isn't able to dry out before it's put in the kiln, it needs somewhere to go, it will push itself out. So my height is good if I'm comparing it to this one, but my width isn't, so I'm gonna start by kind of pulling again, or pushing this against my hands and really trying to kind of elongate the width of it. You know, pulling some clay from the base that is a little bit thicker to kind of help my sides, which are a little bit thinner than the whole base part. Again, notice that I'm constantly turning it every time. I don't spend a bunch of time on one section of it, because this is where you get things to be lopsided. And the whole point of these projects is that you're making something that is perfect. And so you're practicing all of these skills. You're practicing pinch pot, you're practicing smoothing, you're practicing attaching things. So these are all skills that are gonna help you to make all of the kind of more creative projects down the line. Even though these ones are a little bit simple, they can be pretty fun, like once they're glazed and everything. So I'm pretty close on that, so I'm gonna just kind of start smoothing. Again, I'm going through this really quickly just for the sake of demonstrating it to you. I also just made a time lapse of it for you to kind of see it all very quickly as well for review, because, you know, I want you to take your time and build with the clay the correct way, which does include kind of having the patience to wait until it's met the correct stage of clay to do things like attaching. But for the sake of this demo, we're just gonna go for it. And again, notice that I'm just kind of adding any of this clay that I scrape off just into my slip container. It's a great way to, again, waste not, want not. Clay can always be recycled. And you're gonna need slip for this project anyways, so it works out. And then again, this card can be really good for smoothing out any of those lines, and then your kind of sponge is your final step there. Okay, so I know the base does look, it's like a little bit too eggy, so I'm just gonna again kind of try to widen that base part out a bit more before I attach them. The more rounded both of these look before you attach them, then the more perfect your sphere is going to be and the less eggy. It will be a little bit egg shaped when you attach, but I will show you kind of how to deal with that. Okay, so those look pretty good, pretty even. This one does seem a little bit smaller still and a little bit thinner. If you get any cracks along the top, just kind of smooth them out with this. You can also kind of gently tap it on your table just to kind of flatten out, because you do want it to be flat before you attach, just because it helps just to have it be even. You can already tell just by holding them that this half is a little bit thicker than that half. But you know, stuff happens. Okay, so once you have your two halves that are, again, mostly the same shape, at this point, what you should do is leave them in a bag just with no paper towels to dry overnight. I, though, am gonna demonstrate how to score, slip, smooth them and how to kind of get to the finish point. So, first thing you wanna do is score. So take your little serrated knife, just drag it along the edge. Again, you can also use the paper clip. I just like the serrated knife because it creates like multiple lines with one movement. So remember, you're gonna score both things that you're going to attach so that they have those teeth to kind of grab onto each other, because two smooth things will just sit there and they won't be able to attach as well as two things with these little teeth, okay? Then you're gonna take your slip. Again, if your slip is it's not watery enough, add water. If it's too watery, add a little bit more clay, and you're just gonna kind of paint that on with your finger, or you can paint it on with your popsicle stick if you want. So remember, the scoring acts like teeth. The slip is kind of like this temporary glue that helps hold things in place. And then the final piece is smoothing. And what you're gonna need to smooth is you're going to need to roll out a coil to go around the outside. But first we're just gonna kind of place these two together to get them to kind of grab on. And again, notice that there's this seam here. So at first I'm just gonna try to kind of form them so that the, this one just does need to be a bit wider, just so that they can kind of, again, temporarily be touching, but the coil that we're gonna do around the perimeter is really gonna be the thing that keeps it together, okay? Because again, I could just rip this apart, as I just did when it wasn't working out how I wanted. You can just kind of lightly kind of try to smooth these together just while you're rolling your coil, just for your own peace of mind. Again, I just put a little water on my hands, and I'm just gonna leave these here to chill. Grab a little piece of clay, rolling it in between your hands, right, into another sphere. Again, my hands are so dry, so you could wash your hands in between this, but don't have time for that. Okay, so you got your little sphere of clay, and you're gonna roll it in between your palms. Once the coil becomes longer than your palms, then you're going to put it onto your fabric swatch, and then from here is where you roll it out. Again, think about pulling like taffy and really kind of, and again, water, because you're trying to elongate it enough to go around the whole perimeter there. Okay, I'm trying to go a little bit quick so that you don't have to sit here forever watching this. And you don't want you don't want the coil to be super duper thick, because then it's just gonna weigh down your sphere, but you do wanna make sure that it is long enough to do what you want. Again, I know I'm gonna have extra, I just don't like how thick it is at these ends. So I'm just gonna kind of peel that off. Okay, that looks pretty good. So again, before we attach it, I'm just going to score both. So I'm gonna score along this, I'm gonna score along here with my trusty serrated knife, and then a little bit of slip along here, and a little bit of slip, phantom hair, slip along here. How annoying. Okay. And then just kind of take both serrated and slip sides, press them down. And again, this should be done on a leather hard piece of clay, not as I'm doing on this super plasticky clay, but 'tis what it is for the demo, okay? Then from here, take your little popsicle stick, a little bit of water, you're gonna smooth some of it upwards and some of it down, okay? And this is gonna kind of fill out the seam, and make it so that you can see that it's there. And again, just try your best not to cave in. I'm kind of rushing this, so it is caving in a little bit. But again, you won't have that issue if said project is, like I said before, leather hard. You can also use your card if that works. I just like the popsicle stick because it's a little bit more rounded, and it just doesn't cut into the piece as much as sometimes the card does. Sorry, so. And again, so some of the clay goes up, some of it goes down, and then you can kind of smooth over and kind of pull off any of that excess and just scrape it. I'm trying to get this exactly under 15 minutes, so I got 1 minute left. Okay, so once you get all of this smoothed out, which I'm gonna do muy rápido, then you gotta work on kind of getting your sphere to not be such an egg-like shape, which you can do in a couple of ways. Again, I suggest once you get them attached, letting them set up until they're leather hard. Again, overnight with a plastic bag, no paper towels, smoothing one last step with your sponge tool, and then I'm just, again, kind of cleaning it up with this guy. So things that I like to do once it's too eggy is just kind of take it in your palms and kind of rotate it like this, okay? And then you can also kind of roll it onto the table like so. So try your best to get it to be into a good stage before you leave it with with a bag. And then once you've left it just leather hard for a day, it'll be so much easier to smooth.